And let's get more on this now from the chair of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus. Mr. Priebus, thanks for joining us again this morning. You just heard John Kasich there saying the convention, a contested convention, would be magical. But I wonder what you make of this call from Roger Stone, an ally of Donald Trump, putting out a call for days of rage protests in Cleveland.
Well, you know, there's nothing can get stolen from anyone. We have rules in place that if a candidate gets to 1,237 delegates, those delegates are bound, and they will vote that way on the floor. And if they don't vote that way on the floor, which they will, but if they don't, the secretary will read the vote as if they were bound regardless. So we will know where everyone stands on delegates on June 8th after the June 7th primaries. There will be no mystery over who has the majority, or if someone doesn't, whether it's going to be an open convention. If it's an open convention, then we're going to have to be clear, open, and transparent on what the rules say and how they're administered, and it will be very clear, and there'll be cameras at every step of the way. So there'll be no mystery.
No mystery, but what about the rules? You just heard me talk to John Kasich about that Rule 40B that in the last convention required a candidate to have won the majority of delegates in 8 states. Will that be the rule for this convention?
Well, I mean, look, even if it is the rule, it wouldn't prevent a nomination later on in the process when delegates are unbound. So, I mean, the fact is, there's a lot of people interpreting rules that really don't understand the rules. The 8-state rule was put in place after the 2012 Romney delegates changed it. So it is true that the 2016 Rules Committee will review the rules, and they will decide on what the rules are for the 2016 convention. That all being said, you know, major changes to the rules are are not very common. So I think you have to look at both the history of rulemaking and the fact.
Is it fair to say, though, that after a first ballot, there really are no rules? The delegates of the convention decide whatever they want to decide. If you've got a majority in the convention, they can create any rule they want to create. They can nominate anyone they want to nominate.
Generally, everyone is bound on the first ballot. In some states, they're bound on a couple votes. But you're right that on the second or third ballot, more and more delegates are unbound, and they can vote for who they want. Now, you still would have to get a certain amount of states and delegates in place in order to be nominated, and so that's important. You can't just have one person out there nominating a candidate. But generally, your premise is correct, but there are rules in place to prevent 50 people getting nominated. You have to demonstrate a certain amount of support in a certain amount of states in order to get nominated. That all being said, all of this goes away if a candidate gets 1,237 delegates before Cleveland. And right now, Ted Cruz and Donald Trump, they have a possibility of getting to that number, and all of this is put to bed. If it's not put to bed, George, then we're going to have an open convention. It's going to be administered properly, and we're going to have a vote, and we're going to have a multi-ballot convention. That
pledge you got all the candidates to sign to back whoever got the nomination seems to be falling apart. Donald Trump said this week he's not bound by it, and he told Chris Wallace of Fox News that he's still open to running an independent bid. Now that he says he's no longer bound by the pledge, what are the consequences from the Republican National Committee?
Well, look, I mean, we expect that when candidates make commitments to the principles and values of our party, that they would keep it. If they don't want to keep it, just tell us. But I don't. No, listen. I think candidates are also posturing. I think they're posturing for the possibility of an open convention. I think some candidates think that, there's leverage to be had over making these kinds of statements. There's no leverage over us. We're going to administer the convention the same way. And if the candidate can get to a majority on their own, then they're going to be the nominee. But no amount of leverage and statements are going to change it. The second thing, George, is that this statement of loyalty is in exchange for data and resources from the RNC. This is not like some sort of magical paper that we were running around with. It's the same commitment, George, that candidates made in 2012. It's the same commitment that candidates made in 2016. If you want the resources of the RNC,
so are those resources cut off to Donald Trump right now because he's not backing the...
Listen, I'm not making that statement. I had a very good meeting with Donald Trump, and I've got a good conversation yesterday with Ted Cruz, and I'll meet with John Kasich's people next week. I think some of this is posturing, George, and I think after talking about this subject continually for the last 8 months, I would think that people in the news media would understand that it's posturing as well.
Well, it's posturing, but words have meaning, and he said he's not bound by the pledge anymore.
They do.
But at the same time, you know, you see Donald Trump's week this week, battery charge for Corey Lewandowski, that back and forth on abortion. And you add it all up, it seems to be taking a huge toll with women, 74% unfavorable in our latest poll. And Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers, the top woman in the House Republican leadership, says this is hurting the whole party. Is she right?
Well, look, I think tone and tenor matter. We're the party of the open door. We can't grow by subtracting and dividing and telling people to leave the room. I've been saying that for years now. Certainly, tone matters, and I do think that what candidates say matter. But you know, to your point earlier about the party and loyalty and all of that. Look, these folks are running to be the nominee of the Republican Party, and if what you say matters,
but Donald Trump says he's open to an independent
the delegates and the voters, right? But those kinds of comments, I think, have consequences. And so when you make those kinds of comments and you want people to fall in line for you, it makes it more difficult. And so I think that candidates get that. And certainly, you know, if you were running for president of the Kiwanis Club or the Boy Scouts and you said you don't know if you like the Kiwanis or the Boy Scouts, I think that makes your challenge even greater to ultimately win those kinds of posts. It's no different for the Republican Party.
Reince Priebus, thanks for joining us this morning.
You bet.